to the next point. We should ensure whatever we say is clear.
That means work is being done. We can see that it is in opposite direction.
Hello, learners. Welcome to another segment of e-learning. I am Mrs. Chinyo, and I will be taking government for senior secondary school. Today's topic is electoral process. Under the topic, we shall be looking at the following. 1, we'll look at the definition of election. 2, we'll look at the meaning of franchise, sometimes known as suffrage. Last but not the least, point number 3, we are going to look at a brief history about the development of suffrage. Learners, the topic itself says electoral process. I want to let you know that there are a lot of processes, steps, and activities involved before an actual election. Things like registration of voters, registration of parties, review of voters' registers, and so many other activities. And that is why the topic is electoral process, because we are going to continue to see this topic in our other contacts. Learners, I want to call your attention to what election is all about. I am sure that most of you in your various schools get involved in election. Some of you belong to organizations such as MSS, FCS, YCS, Literary and Debating Society, Young Farmers Club, among others. And in each of these clubs and societies, you have officials. I know in some schools, it is the school management that appoints the leaders. But I also know that in other schools, members of such clubs and societies elect their own officials to manage the affairs of their clubs over a given period of time. In the same manner, in the larger society at your local government levels, at the state level, and at the federal government level, we have various elective positions. We have councillors, local government chairmen, we have members of state houses of assemblies, we have governors, we elect members into our national assemblies, we elect our presidents, and so on. Now, these electoral processes, you and I are involved. For those of you that have attained the age, you actually go out on election dates to go and elect such officials to power. This, therefore, makes you and I part and parcel of the electoral processes and activities of our society. Going by an official definition of election, I want to simply narrow down the definition of election as an act, that is activity, of electing candidates into elective posts or offices. I hope you are satisfied with that definition. Having said that, let us go to the second, which is the meaning or definition of franchise. Learners, I do not want you to be confused. Often at times, you may hear me using franchise and suffrage interchangeably. It means the same thing. So don't get confused. If you hear me use the word suffrage and later I use the word franchise, I want you to get conversant, get used to the phrases. What then is franchise or suffrage? This means the constitutional rights given to a qualified citizen of a country to vote and be voted for. Constitutionally, the right that an individual has in a political community to vote for candidates of his choice or to vie for an elected or elective position is known as what? Franchise. Now, let me quickly add that franchise could mean something else in other disciplines like economics. Please do not confuse the meaning of franchise as taught by your economics teacher, because it means different, it is quite different with that of government. That is, franchise in government means a different thing from franchise in economics, for example. So please don't get confused. Point number 3, I want us to briefly look at the development of franchise. How did the right to vote and be voted for all began? History has it that there are evidences showing or pointing to the election of political rulers in Greek and Roman empires centuries before the birth of Christ. In your textbooks, you simply see BC. It means birth of Christ. That is to say, the concept of election, as you know it today, is not a modern phenomenon. It started even before the birth of Christ, because Greek and Roman empires evolved that idea of electing people to go to their parliaments and preside over how the empires or their societies would be administered. However, bestowal of widespread franchise as we know it today dates back only to the beginning of 1900s. That is, in this modern day 20th century. That is when the idea of bestowing franchise became very popular or widespread. Now, franchise from the 20th century passed through the following stages. That is, we want to cite examples of the stages of franchise starting from the 20th century. Example number 1, bestowal of suffrage was restricted to membership of prestigious bodies and societies. In the beginning of the 20th century, this example is telling us that it was not everybody that qualified for franchise, except where such a person belonged to a very renowned, and that is prestigious, body or association. Just a few. Franchise was restricted to a privileged few. Nextly, bestowal of suffrage to landed owners. But due to the emergence of a new class of wealthy persons produced by the Industrial Revolution, they also fought for bestowal of franchise. Now, apart from the class that enjoyed franchise because they belong to prestigious associations or bodies, the next group of people that enjoyed franchise were those persons that were rich land owners, and they also had landed properties. Such people were considered to have a stake in the society, and as such, suffrage was given or bestowed to them. Thereafter, as a result of the Industrial Revolution that swept European countries, including the United States, a new class of wealthy persons or wealthy men emerged. Now, this person, in order to protect their wealth, also agitated that franchise be bestowed on them so that they can also have a say in governments and how their wealth is managed or protected. We are looking at the stages in the development of franchise. Now, the third stage in the development of suffrage or franchise is the adoption of manhood adult suffrage. The word there is manhood adult suffrage. That is to say that suffrage was bestowed on male or men that were adult or considered to be adult in the society. My learners, I want you to note that the age to be considered as an adult varied from one country to the other. Some of the countries at this period considered a man that is age 19 and above to be an adult, while other countries considered male from ages 21 and above to be adult. Now, this is the third stage in the development of franchise. Now, let's look at the other stage. From 1918 to 1928, my learners, various countries decided to extend franchise to the women folk. Prior to this period, women were denied franchise for whatever reason best known to them. For example, the first country to give women the right to vote and be voted for is Belgium. Belgium bestowed franchise to their women between 1918 and 1920. Thereafter, Britain followed, or Britain keyed into the bestowal of franchise on women, and this they did between 1918 and 1928. While the USA, that is United States of America, decided to give their women folk franchise from 1920. Italy, France, and Japan followed much later after the Second World War. That was when they chose to give the women folk their right to vote and be voted for. Now, let us quickly look at the stages of the development of franchise in Nigeria. In Nigeria, franchise developed as follows. Following the Sir Hugh Clifford's Constitution of 1922, which decided to give Nigerians an opportunity to be elected into the Central Legislative Council that was established so that they can also legislate for their own country. Now, to participate or to be able to gain entrance into this Legislative Council, it had to be on the platform of a political party. Therefore, election or franchise had to be given to certain people, even though it was very restricted. However, it was a step forward. So therefore, residents of Lagos, or rather 3 residents of Lagos, were given the chance to be elected, and 1 was given the chance to be elected from Calabar into this Legislative Council. Now, franchise, even at this period, was strictly for the male. That is, it was manhood franchise or suffrage. A male that was 21 years and above. A male that was 21 years old and above. Now, that wasn't the only qualification for franchise in Nigeria from 1922. Such a male must have resided within the area of registration for not less than 12 months. Now, that is to say, if you were bestowed franchise, you must have resided in Lagos or Calabar for not less than 12 months before registration of that election. To qualify for franchise, such a person must earn not less than £100 in the previous year before election. That is 1 year before election, such a person must have earned not less than £100. This placed a lot of restrictions for people to qualify for franchise because not many earn that kind of amount. By 1951 elections, there were changes to those who could get franchise. The first consideration was that only Nigerians were bestowed suffrage, and such persons must have an annual income of not less than £50. There's a reduction in the amount of earnings. Now we have £50. As the years went by 1954, For one to qualify for franchise, all such a person needed was evidence that he was a taxpayer. Once the male could show evidence that he was a taxpayer, then he qualified for franchise. That is by 1954. By 1959, Nigeria adopted universal adult suffrage. Now, the word universal means all over, isn't it? Completely, the world over, all over. Nigeria decided that universal adult suffrage will be adopted, however, except in northern Nigeria. That is to say, in other parts of the country, franchise was bestowed upon adult male and women. Whether you were rich, whether you were poor, whether you belong to a prestigious society or not, as long as you were sane and you were an adult and the court of law did not place any restriction on you, you qualified for franchise. But for some reasons, northern parts of Nigeria, women were excluded from these voting rights. They were still denied franchise until the 1979 elections. That was when universal adult suffrage was bestowed upon the women folk in northern Nigeria. My learners, we have covered a lot in this lesson. In the beginning of the lesson, we looked at the meaning of election, where we said it means the act or an activity that entails the election of representatives or political office holders by the citizens or by electorates. That is the summary of the meaning of election. Thereafter, we said franchise, which is also known as suffrage, means the right that the Constitution has given an individual to vote for a candidate of his choice or to stand for election himself and be elected if he so wishes. After that, we quickly look at the development of franchise. We said the right to vote and be voted for did not just come up automatically in modern times, but it passed through a lot of processes. We said franchise actually began in medieval Greeks and Roman empires when the first parliamentarians were elected into office. We now said Nigeria voting rights actually started in 1920. 1922. Voting right was given to citizens from 1922. Now, that came with some restrictions. That is, it was a kind of restricted franchise. But by 1979, franchise was granted to all adults in Nigeria. Learners, before I go, I want to leave you with the following assignments. Number 1, define election. 2, define franchise. 3, briefly narrate the historical development of franchise. I take point number 3 again. Briefly narrate the historical development of franchise. When you finish the assignments, please send it to this number 08104 742-553. I come again, 08104 742-553. I remain Chinyo Juliana Tianhua, teacher of government, senior secondary school. Thank you.